ship left on the dock for more than 24 hours will be compressed to a cube at the owner's expense. Welcome to Sacred Cow Shipyards.
We're going to talk about energy storage and production a little bit in this episode later on, so what better sponsor for this particular episode than Sanctuary Coffee? After all, it appears that coffee is one of the primary energy sources for the entire human species. And whether you like Peruvian single source or pumpkin spiced coffee, after all, it is coming up on that season of the year again, Sanctuary Coffee has you covered with free shipping on all USA orders. And best of all of those orders are roasted and shipped the day you order. And since you're going to order coffee anyways, come on, we both know you are, everyone knows you are, you're going to order coffee, why not order it from a place that partners with an organization trying to help children through abusive situations? That is, once again, Sanctuary Coffee, the sponsor of this week's episode. And now, to be totally uncharacteristic and cut straight to the chase, this episode is going to be about Ender's Game. No, not actually the whole book. In fact, I'm not even going to tackle the whole moral quandary of using your children to commit genocide on an entire other species, all while telling the children that they were just playing a game and it was just a simulation. No, that's a hot mess, and as always, this channel is not equipped for those kind of philosophical debates. And speaking of philosophical debates, I am also not going to address Orson Scott Card's core theory that if you understand someone or something well enough to destroy it, you have to love it as much as it loves itself. Personally, I hold that to be an absolute load of hogwash, but Orson Scott Card is arguably a very smart sophont, so I am willing to give him the benefit of the doubt and simply agree to disagree, I suppose. It's unlikely he will ever find this episode or this channel, so it doesn't really matter. What I am going to talk about is a specific thing from the movie, the 2013 movie. And specifically, this. No, not actually the shuttle. I have no significant complaints with the shuttle. It apparently was a cooperative effort between a certain Robert Simmons and a certain Ben Proctor. And if you know anything about the game Borderlands 2 or the movie Avatar, those names might actually stand out to you. Apparently Mr. Proctor did the initial 3D model for the shuttle, and then Mr. Simmons did some detailed drawing on top of that model, and then he passed it off the digital domain for the final rendering. But honestly, as a single stage to orbit vehicle, it's not bad. It's honestly better as a deorbiting vehicle. It's better as a shuttle going from orbit to the ground. Mostly because it's hard to conceive that it can actually carry enough fuel to get it from the ground to the orbit. But honestly, still, I'm going to give them credit for using reaction control systems while it is in space to reorient the shuttle. And I am definitely going to give them credit for solving the problem of docking with Battle School. Apparently, Battle School is in orbit in the Ender's Game movie, and it has rotational sections that are simulating gravity, and then it has a zero-G section, of course, in the middle, where the kids can do whatever the heck it is they're supposed to be doing. Well, naturally, docking on a rotating ring is kind of challenging. They simplify the problem by basically decelerating the shuttle into being caught by the ring as it rotates past. Now, ironically, since the shuttle is mostly designed to be on a gravity system, that is to say it has seats on the floor, it has a defined floor, it has defined doors, it's not a three-dimensional space. It's very clearly a aircraft analog that gets launched into space. It even has like a pathetic little flight deck crew only door, the thing that got added after your horribly misnamed Patriot Act in your United States of America nation state. Yeah, it's basically just a plane that goes into space. But since you're latching it on to the outside of a rotating station where the outer rim is probably about at 1G, it doesn't make a huge difference. You're not adding additional stress to the space frame. And then you don't have to do the complicated Babylon 5 solution where it docks in the central non-rotating section, then you have to figure out how to get it out to the rotating section to properly onload it or offload it or whatever. But anyways, enough about the shuttle. Like I said, I have no significant complaints. It's an interesting design. I have questions about its fuel capacity, which leads us to the next part. The actual complaint. This. What the f*** is this? Actually, we all know what this is if you've seen the movie, and I'll tell you if you haven't. This is apparently the launch facility for the shuttle in question. I don't even know where to start. You know what? I'll start with the one good point, and then we can go from there. The one good point of this launch facility for the shuttle that gets the launchies to the battle school is that it has a flame trench. Now, ironically, apparently the producers of the Ender's Game movie actually consulted with Elon Musk about what shuttle design in the not terribly distant future might look like. And, well, this one has a flame trench, and Starship did not. Now, technically, Starship was still experimenting as to whether or not it actually needed a flame trench, but it turns out that it did. Well, okay, fine. This thing does actually have a flame trench, which is just cluttered with shit. Why is it cluttered with shit? Have you imbeciles ever seen a flame trench before? They're mostly smooth because you want the flame to go out unhindered. Anything that is sticking out in a flame trench won't be sticking out a whole lot longer. Because once again, there's superheated gases and who knows what else going down this trench at obscene velocities. And why is there just so much crap in there? Sorry, I said that was a good thing. I may have lied. Okay, fine. It has a flame tunnel channel trench thing, which directs the blast away from the shuttle trying to launch. This is a good thing. It prevents the whole problem that the recent, I think, Starship launch had, where stuff might have actually been like kicked out of the ground and hit the vehicle before it could even launch. This is a win. Except for, the square miles of solar panels surrounding the launch site in the movie, not in Starship case. At least I assume that's what those are. It's the only thing that makes sense in the context of what they're showing us. So, great. Okay, fine. Solar panels. All arrayed around a rocket launch site. So hold on. You know what makes solar panels not work very well? Having all kinds of dust and debris and detritus being deposited on top of them. And guess what rocket launches do? Kick up all kinds of dust and debris and detritus. Why in the great maker's green and fluffy earth would you put solar panel arrays right next to a rocket launch site? Actually, let me back that up. Let's look at where this rocket launch site is. It is very clearly in the mountains, since it is surrounded by mountains. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if the site was actually built on top of a frozen lake of some sort, given how flat it is between the mountains. Kind of irregular. If it weren't for that irregularity, I might consider this launch site being somewhere in the Colorado region of your North American continent. But given that irregularity, that perfectly flat valley between the mountains, unless it was geoformed, which is entirely possible given the technology in the movie, we're looking at like Canadian Rockies now, right? Where there are permanently frozen lakes. Well, okay, fine. Either way, Colorado is not particularly optimal for solar panels. I mean, it's shockingly not bad, but once you get into the mountains, your total energy received on a square foot of ground given averages over the year is not great. And given that there's snow on the ground in North America, that typically implies this would be winter-ish, and therefore the amount of solar energy being deposited on any given square foot of ground in Colorado is even less, because, the whole, orbital tilt of your planet and blah, blah, blah seasons. Maybe we'll do an episode about that. I mean, who knows? Do your schools teach you how seasons work anymore? I honestly don't know. And yes, I'm making the radical assumption that this movie is probably taking place in North America, mostly because it was a North American movie, and most alien-related movies either revolve around New York City or Los Angeles for some bizarre reason. Maybe it's the Swiss Alps, but they don't get a whole lot better solar than Colorado does. And either way, regardless of where this particular mountain range is, you're still putting a massive solar array at the bottom of a massive valley surrounded by massive mountains, which is still cutting into the total solar emissions that these solar panels are receiving. Why would you do that? Well, I have some conjecture about that, naturally. I mean, why would I be talking about it if I didn't have some ideas? But they're not great ideas. That is to say, I think they're a reasonable explanation of what's happening, but the explanation is dumb. It's pretty fair to say that rockets, especially single-stage orbit rockets, cannot run exclusively on electricity. I mean, I guess if it had an ion drive of sufficient size, it still wouldn't even work then, because the technology in this particular movie has not progressed far enough for those kinds of drives to be feasible to get you out of a gravity well. So what are they using all that electricity, well, what little electricity they're getting from the solar panels to do? I mean, I guess it could just be running the installation there, but there's a remarkable lack of fuel tanks and such like on the surface. There's also a lot of snow around them, and like I talked about, this whole facility might be built on top of a frozen lake. Well, if you can see where I'm going, you can understand why I think this whole idea is fucking stupid, but in case you can't, I am hypothesizing that the international fleet in the Ender's Game movie was using solar panels to crack water in order to produce hydrogen and oxygen to fuel their single-stage orbit shuttle. That is just so fractally stupid that Hollywood probably did exactly that. But why is it dumb? It's green, right? Technically, yes. It's still stupid. First off, cracking water requires more energy than you get out of burning the hydrogen afterwards. This should not surprise anyone familiar with the 4 laws of thermodynamics, but that's just the way it is. Secondly, electrolysis is not a terribly efficient process. Even if you were at energy equilibrium doing both the cracking and the burning, your electrolysis systems right now are only about 60 to 70% efficient. Now, maybe fine, we're in the future and we can spot that up to like 80 or 90% efficient, but that's still a significant loss, especially when you consider the power source. Solar panels on your planet currently peak out about 50% efficient, and those are weird oddballs that are really, really expensive. And okay, fine, we can spot them up to say they're 2/3 efficient, 66%. But still, you built the solar panels somewhere where there's snow on the ground, probably year-round, so there's not going to be a lot of solar exposure at the bottom of a valley, which also decreases your solar exposure. And then they're right next to a rocket launch pad, which is getting them dirty and nasty and filthy every time the goddamn rocket launches. I mean, yes, the good news is that if it is actually using the hydrogen for fuel, it's not actually producing any complex carbon crap that'll really muck up the solar panels, but it's still kicking up a lot of dust and dirt and other detritus, and it's gonna mess up your efficiency. So basically you're stacking losses on top of losses on top of losses, and building that whole precarious pile of losses on top of an already highly inefficient power production system. And I'm not even counting like the losses in the distribution and the management and the storage and this, that, and the fucking other. It makes absolutely no sense. Which, again, is probably exactly why Hollywood went down that angle. I swear I don't understand your species. On your planet, and actually on a lot of other planets, there are rocks that just stay warm. They are perpetually warm. I mean, not technically perpetual on the galactic timescale, but long enough for your purposes. And you can put those rocks in water, and the water warms up and boils and creates steam. And then you use that steam to make more steam, and you use that second steam to run it through turbines and make electricity. And you're just literally using warm rocks. And yes, there's waste produced, but it's fairly easily stored and managed. And the power production facility is a mere fraction of what the size of a solar grid necessary to compete with it would be. But oh no, you don't use the warm rocks. You use functional slave labor to dig up chemicals necessary to produce photovoltaic panels that have efficiency ratings that are absolutely laughable. And then for some reason you've convinced everyone that they work everywhere, which is even more laughable. And I swear to the great maker, your species is just not gonna make it. And that's without even touching on the complexities of using hydrogen as a rocket fuel and all the problems associated with storing it. I mean, if they could just flash create the hydrogen the moment they needed to use it for the single-stage orbit shuttle, then that's perfectly fine, but solar panels can't do that unless they have a massive battery bank built into that frozen lake that we're talking about. Probably even a capacitor bank you'd have to have. And yeah, hydrogen is fun, exciting, really hard to contain, almost by design. But like I said, that whole rant was conjecture, and it could be something else entirely. It could just be that they were using the solar panels to power the infrastructure of the launch site, even though there doesn't seem to be a whole lot out there. Although the size of the solar grid would be about right to keep a building of that size in proper operation, if assuming they have, servers and stuff in there. So, yeah, maybe I'm just complaining to complain. I mean, that is why this channel exists, right? And that's all from Sacred Cow Shipyards. Please be advised that any ship left on the docks for more than 24 hours will be compressed to a cube at the owner's expense. Have a nice day.